Lights up, cameras up. Time for a story. Let's start with 36, the number of countries I've traveled to. 36 countries. And I didn't plan to travel to 36 countries. I had just lived in Korea for 9 years and some change. And then, over those 9 years that I lived in Korea, I hadn't traveled much. And so I felt regret. I felt as if I wasted a lot of time. And so when I had the opportunity to live and work in Saudi Arabia, everything shifted for me. And I decided, because I was in a different part of the globe, and because my salary was almost 4 times greater than what it was in South Korea, I said there's no reason why I shouldn't take full advantage of this. Essentially, I waited, nearly a decade to travel. You see, when I went to Korea, I thought that I was going to travel. I was going to learn the Korean language, and I was also going to become a better martial artist. Well, I tried studying martial arts, and I found that it's certainly not like it is in the States. In the States, there are a lot of adult students at martial arts, schools. But in Korea, it's sort of like an after-school extracurricular activity for kids, and not a lot of adults, participated in it. So I just didn't find anyone, of my age group to practice with. And so I didn't continue. So that was with Taekwondo. Now with studying Korean, I improved my Korean while I was in Korea because I had plenty of opportunities to do so. I was immersed in the culture, immersed in, the language. So my Korean speaking ability improved. Taekwondo skills did not improve. And then lastly, traveling. Although I traveled between the United States and Korea, many times I, did not get out of that loop, so to speak. The loop was fly from Los Angeles to Korea and then back to Los Angeles to visit family, and those were my trips. And so over, nearly a decade, I didn't get out of that loop, that cycle. It was just, home to visit the family, go back to Korea, work a year or so, and then, go back to visit the family. My mom and dad, my sister, and her growing family, So, so when I got to Saudi Arabia, I was earning more money, and I was in a different location, a different part, geographic location, and I realized that from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, I could easily travel to Europe, Africa, or any other country in the Middle East, or Middle Eastern countries, as it were. And I took advantage of that. So, to put it into perspective, I had lived in Korea for nearly a decade, and I had traveled to maybe 4 countries outside of the United States. All right, so I traveled to the United States, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and I believe the Philippines. The majority of the time that I was in Korea. Those were the only countries I traveled to. And, something changed in my life. The year was 2015, and I traveled more that year than I had traveled at any given year, um, you know, before that time while I was living in Korea. So basically, before 2015, while I lived in Korea, from 2007 to 2015, I didn't travel to any other countries. I traveled to the United States, Korea, and Japan for the majority of years. All right, I had gone to Japan for the first time in 2009. So between 2007 and 2009, I traveled from America to Korea and then back to America. That was it. 2009, I went to Japan for the first time. And then in 2012, so from 2007 to 2012, I had only been to Japan, the United States, and Korea. And then in 2012, I traveled to Taiwan. And after 2012, in 2013, I went back to Japan. In 2014, I may have gone back to Japan, but I certainly went back to Japan in 2015. The way that I remember, how many times I traveled, to Japan is because in 2013, I traveled to Japan 3 times, and in 2015, I traveled to Japan 5 times. All right. But now, 2015 was a year of change for me because, let's see, in 2014, I left my job in Korea, and I was really shaking up things and trying to, I was trying to explore new options. And in 2014, I quit my job in Korea. I moved back home, and I stayed here in Los Angeles for about 3 months until I found a new job. And then I moved back to Korea, where I studied Korean for a month at a university in Korea. All right, so after 2014, when I got back to Korea, I had left my job and I was just, looking for a change because I had stayed at that job for 4 years. I had been at that job from 2010 to 2014. All right, so I was looking to change things up. I did. I quit the job. I came back to Korea. I found a different job, a different situation, and luckily, I had my summer and winter vacations to myself, which I didn't have at the previous job. So, having quit the job and found another, workplace, I did find that there were differences between the previous workplace and the next workplace. And the difference was I had vacation time, more vacation time than I did at the first university where I worked. Okay. Now, because I had that vacation time, I found that I could pick up extra work, during those months. I could find other jobs to do. And that was a blessing because in the summer of 2015, on my way back to America, I found a job in Peru. And I got the job, and they flew us from Los Angeles. They flew me from Los Angeles to Peru to work for 2 weeks. And that was my first time visiting Peru. And so having visited Peru, really shook things up for me because for basically nearly 10 years, my life was highly influenced by Asian culture. And being in Korea meant, interaction with human beings was very distant. You don't touch people, you don't shake hands. You simply bow your head to acknowledge a person. And when I arrived in Peru, and when I met my staff members and when I met my fellow staff members, and when I met my students, I was welcomed in a far warmer manner. They gave me hugs, they kissed me on my cheek, and um, that was a new experience for me, and it was a breath of fresh air. And I loved that warmth because I wasn't getting it in Korea. And so when I visited Peru for the first time, I was blown away by the differences in culture. Um, Certainly, I knew that Latin culture was, I think, more lively, or I had an impression from the media, or, there's a stereotype of, the Latin lover. What's his name? I can't think of it right now, but a Don Juan, that's who it is. The Don Juan, the Latin lover. This affectionate, passionate culture. That's the impression that I have of Latin culture. And so I did get a sense of that passion while I was there. And that was like a breath of fresh air. I loved that and I enjoyed that. And so when I returned to Korea, I had a very different, I had an eye-opening experience. And I was very, very saddened because I hadn't experienced the warmth of, Latin culture to that extent, before, because had I known, the difference in culture, or had I had a greater sense of the difference of cultures in different parts of the world, maybe I would have chosen to, live and work in those parts of the world. However, one consideration or one reservation would have been that typically Latin American countries do not pay as much as the Asian countries, so I would have had to, seriously consider that. But as far as an experience, a gap year experience, something that, typically white people have between high school and university, a year in a Latin American country seems like an awesome, character building experience that just, you can't really compare. So anyway, in 2015, when I had that experience in Peru, my impression of Latin America, pretty much was set, and I just really wanted to return because I had such a wonderful time. And but Peru was the first country in Latin America that I had traveled to, and 2015 was a new beginning for me because after traveling to Peru, I set my sights on traveling to more countries. And I said, gosh darn it, I've lived in Korea for nearly a decade, and I haven't even flown to China, which is only a 3-hour flight. And, in comparison, to get to Peru, I had to fly, 10 hours from Korea to America, and then from Los Angeles, I had to fly to Peru, which was like another 6 hours or something. And those are, so many different continents. That's a tremendous amount of travel that I had to do. And so I said, gosh darn it, I'm going to travel more. And so by 2016, I had left Korea and I was in Saudi Arabia. There was more money and I had free time during the Muslim holidays. And so I traveled. I traveled to Istanbul, which was one of the first countries. But then in 2017, that's when my travel really picked up because I was very, antsy, and, wanderlust was really strong, and I was curious. I wanted to travel to all these countries, and plus I could afford it, so I said, screw it, I'm doing it. And so I just went. And in 2017, I traveled to 17 countries. And I did that because, as I mentioned before, I regretted, staying in Korea for, 10 years and not traveling as much as I thought I would. And I wasn't going to let an opportunity like Saudi Arabia pass me by without traveling a lot more. Now, I certainly could have, found the time and maybe even found the money to travel while I was in South Korea. But my finances were a mess and I didn't have a lot of time to travel. So I found it difficult, to say the least, to travel. So that's pretty much why I didn't travel from South Korea. But money was a big issue. Saudi Arabia changed all of that. So the year is 2021, and I've been back in America since 2019. Pretty much we're coming out of this COVID pandemic, and I still am at the 36 country mark. So when I returned to America in 2019, I had traveled to 36 countries, and now it is 2021, and I have still I've still only been to 36 countries. But even during the pandemic, I did travel. I did travel with my wife to Mexico. We traveled to Tulum and Cancun on the Yucatan Peninsula, as well as Washington, D.C. So we still traveled, but I would like to travel to Africa. I would like to travel to Ghana, Tanzania, Ghana, Tanzania, Kenya, and I'm a little scared to travel to Nigeria. I think I can handle Ghana, and I've already been to Tanzania. I think I can handle Kenya, and possibly some other countries, Uganda or Rwanda, and Sierra Leone, Senegal. Yeah, I think I can handle those. The Gambia. I think I can handle those countries. So I want to make the most of my travels, and I want to see more of Africa. Okay, peace.